I recognize the member from Orleans.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon, everyone. Madam Speaker, this government calls Bill 5 the Protect Ontario by Unleashing Our Economy Act, but what it really does is unleash unchecked power, and it muzzles the people of Ontario. Bill 5 is one of the most sweeping omnibus bills this legislature has ever seen. It guts the Endangered Species Act. It rewrites environmental protections. It weakens heritage preservation and lets the government bulldoze local rules inside so-called special economic zones. That alone, Madam Speaker, should demand serious debate. But instead of listening, this government has time allocated the bill, jamming it through with as little scrutiny as possible. And we have to ask, Madam Speaker, if the bill is so good for the economy, why are they so afraid of the questions? I think that's pretty important, Madam Speaker. The Minister of Economic Development has never been afraid to answer questions. He answered questions for almost an hour today during question period. So if this bill is so good for the economy, why is the government so afraid of answering questions? So, Madam Speaker, let's not forget, this bill is facing fierce opposition from Indigenous leaders, from environmental experts, and from municipal officials alike. The Assembly of First Nations has sounded the alarm, Madam Speaker. The Canadian Environmental Law Association has demanded that the bill be withdrawn because, Madam Speaker, they know what's at stake: the environment, treaty rights, and the democratic process. And yet, what is this government's response? The government's response isn't to slow down and take their time. The government's response isn't to seek expert advice and feedback from the public. The government's response is to speed it up, is to bulldoze through. That's not responsible, Madam Speaker. So let's be clear. This is not red tape reduction. This is public trust destruction. Plain and simple. Bill 5 would allow the government to override long-standing protections for species at risk, just with the signature of a pen. It opens the door to backroom deals in areas exempted from planning laws, and it creates zones where environmental assessments, local input, and even Indigenous consultation can be pushed aside. No more community input, no more expert input, no more rules. It sounds a lot like this debate on time allocation, Madam Speaker. The government's not interested in any additional input from the public. They're not interested in additional input from the opposition. They're just interested on facilitating their summer vacation. Madam Speaker, if there are no rules, who is responsible for the future consequences? I don't think the government's given us a good answer on that. If there are no rules in these special economic zones and something gets built or something gets accelerated and then something bad happens as a result of that, who's on the hook? Who's on the hook other than the people in that community who will be most directly affected? This is not how we build prosperity, Madam Speaker. This is how you build lawsuits. If the government's objective is to have the people of Ontario sued a lot more, they've hit a home run with Bill 5, Madam Speaker. But perhaps what is most disturbing is this government's contempt for democracy. They're using time allocation to cut off Indigenous voices. They're using it to block environmental scientists. They're using it to silence the opposition who are just trying to do our jobs, which is to question, which is to raise concerns, which is to bring feedback from people that we're hearing from in our communities, in our areas of expertise. So, Madam Speaker, that's not leadership from the government. That is legislative cowardice. Legislative cowardice. The people of Ontario deserve better, and frankly, the people of Ontario know what's happening. This government is trying to bury Bill 5 before it gets the scrutiny it deserves, before the headlines catch up with the consequences, before communities realize what's being taken from them. Madam Speaker, as I said, this isn't red tape reduction, it's public trust destruction. Bill 5 guts environmental protections, it silences Indigenous voices, and it hands the government the power to bulldoze local planning rules behind closed doors. And now they're time allocating the bill, ramming it through before people can even read the fine print. If this government is so confident that the bill will help Ontarians, why are they so terrified of debate? You don't rush democracy unless you're afraid of what the people might say, Madam Speaker. So finally, Madam Speaker, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of a lot of people, when you hide your agenda behind an omnibus bill and a stopwatch, you're not unleashing the economy. You're unleashing damage and doing everything you can to avoid accountability for it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.